Hi guys! I just finished taking Kirk Shinmoto's new head painting class, and let me tell you, it was game-changing for me. This course was worth its weight in gold. I'm going to share my review of why this painting class really stood out to me, as someone with very limited painting experience in the past. And I'll be honest, I didn't really even enjoy painting before taking this class. I thought painting was super tedious and you have to sit there for hours mixing colors until you get everything looking just right. And I couldn't have been more wrong. So let's dive into why this painting course is the perfect investment for anyone looking to take the next step from drawing to painting and really get a solid foundation in their painting skills. Also, stay tuned till the end if you want to see the homework that I personally did throughout the class. Let's first discuss what this course is. Head Painting with Kirk Shinmoto is a newly offered head painting class offered on Kirk's website. The course was 10 weeks long, and we met live via Skype every single week to get critiques on our homework and also to ask the instructor any questions that we had. The lectures were uploaded weekly on a Google Drive so that we could watch them on our own time. If you go on Kirk's website, you'll find more details about this class. It says, "This class is an introduction to head painting with acrylic gouache paint, designed as a stepping stone from drawing to painting. We will start from the beginning discussing traditional materials and work up from painting in grayscale to using a limited palette of red, white, black, and yellow, aka the Zorn palette. And then these are the topics we cover every single week, starting off with black and white painting and eventually making our way to using the limited color Zorn palette. The subject of the class is on head painting, however, the concepts talked about in this class apply broadly to painting overall, so I think it's actually a great introductory class to painting if you have a little bit of head drawing experience under your belt. So now that we covered broadly what this class is, let me tell you the biggest things that I personally took away from the class. So I briefly mentioned how I didn't really enjoy painting in the past. Every time I tried to paint, I ended up getting frustrated and even overwhelmed by all of the choices that I had to make. With traditional drawing, you have pencil and paper, and you can just focus on making your drawing look nice, which is already hard enough as it is. But with painting, it feels like you have an infinite number of colors you can combine, and nothing ever feels like it's done. You're just mixing paint around for hours trying to render something until you're happy with it. And then you end up making a muddy mess of a painting that lacks any kind of cohesion. This kind of summarizes my limited experiences with painting before taking this class. After taking this class, I realized the big thing that I was missing in my foundations, and that was a clear step-by-step process. What I mean by this is an organizational way to think about all of the elements of the painting, such as the structure, values, temperature, and color. Before I thought I didn't like painting, but in reality, I just didn't have a process to follow to make it enjoyable. Kirk is really good at providing a process that you can follow every time so that you're not wondering how to start, and you're not just pushing paint around hoping for a happy accident to happen. He does this so well by progressively introducing topics in their relative importance one by one. For example, in the first week, we only worked with black and white paint in a very graphic manner to be able to see the big shadow shapes. Then you can see in the second week, we started introducing more in-between values, but there was still a very clear value hierarchy which organized the light values and the dark values. In the third week, we were still working with black and white, but he introduced the idea of high-key and low-key paintings, where we limit the range of values that we use, while still maintaining a separation between lights and darks. When he finally introduced color in week 7, we started off by adding just the color red. And this introduced us to the idea of temperature in a painting, and how to organize warm and cool color relationships. Then, the next week, we added yellow to our painting, which is the famous Zorn palette. Here, we really started to bring everything together. Structure, values, temperature, and color. When you build up on these ideas one by one, it makes more sense which ones you should be prioritizing and thinking about when you're painting. What I learned is that painting is similar to drawing, and it's all about organization. And you use things such as values, temperature, and color to bring out the structure of your painting. After that, you can start thinking about things like composition and design and making certain parts of your painting stand out. It's a lot more digestible than starting off with a full palette and a blank canvas and forced to paint, which doesn't really teach you how you should be thinking about everything in steps. I used to think that you're just supposed to draw and paint what you see, but there's also another layer where you're using all these different elements to really design and bring out what you want to see. The second biggest takeaway that I got from this class really ties into what I mentioned already about organization. This is technically called an intermediate level head painting class, but Kirk talks about beginner foundational concepts all the time. He brings in the cube, the sphere, the cone, and injects some kind of fundamental in all the lectures and critiques in a very bottom-up kind of approach. Everything he talks about is such a core fundamental concept that I can really take all of these same ideas and apply them to drawing. What I mean by foundational concept is really the core visual language of art itself. For example, forms, structure, values, edges, shapes, temperature, and color. Ultimately, this class really benefited my understanding of both drawing and painting. Another aspect that I liked about this class was that we worked on multiple paintings every single week, and not just one painting for the entire class. This let us fail a lot and just really focus on applying the foundational concepts that we're learning about every single week. It wasn't about making a pretty end result. This is the first class I took with Kirk after hearing a lot of good things about his classes, and overall, Kirk really impressed me as a teacher. He's really good at lecturing, and you learn a lot of fundamentals in his class and pick up new ways of thinking about things. He has a YouTube channel you can check out, which I'll link below, where you can get a feel of his teaching style. I also found him really approachable as a teacher. It felt natural for me to ask him a bunch of questions every single week, and I never felt like I was asking a stupid question. He's also really good at honing in on the one or two things that you need to work on that week based on your homework. I definitely want to take more classes with him in the future, and on his site there are some other classes he offers, such as costume and perspective, which are definitely catching my eye. If you're curious about taking this class, here are some of the materials that we used, as well as some of my recommendations. Kirk did his demos with Holbein acrylic wash. We used these 4 colors: lamp black, titanium white, scarlet, and yellow ochre. Even though we only used a limited palette in this class, I feel much more confident now to expand my palette to include more colors in the future, because Kirk gave us the foundation that we needed, and he also includes tips in the last week of how we can expand our palette and studies further. We did our paintings in these hot press watercolor sketchbooks that you can get on Amazon in a 3-pack, which I'll link below. I personally use a drawing board to hold the sketchbook and paint against my table. For this class, you're going to need a lot of brushes. Any kind of cheap synthetic watercolor brush will do. On the materials list for the class, he says you can use a standard number 7 round or a number 3 or 4 round brush. But in my experience, I was having a lot of issues with my smaller brushes fraying really fast. So I think it's handy to have multiple round brushes in the same size. I used a lot of size 1 to size 4 round brushes. These are the Robert Simmons White Sable short handle brushes and the Winsor Newton University brushes. To go along with the brushes, I recommend using a brush cleaner like this one. This is the Masters brush cleaner. You're also going to need a palette. I really like the Masterson's Stay Wet palette in the beginning. This thing is like magic because it keeps your paints from drying for days, especially when acrylic paint dries so fast. Later on, I switched to using a porcelain palette because I had a feeling that the Stay Wet palette was wearing out my brushes faster because the surface is grittier. But I didn't like how the paint dried super fast on the porcelain palette. You're also going to need some kind of bucket for your water. And because we're painting like 6 to 10 heads every single week, you're going to want to have a source of references. The references aren't provided in the class, so you get to pick your own references for homework. I personally just bought some reference packs from Graphic Studio because I didn't want to spend so much time every week just looking for references. It just makes your life easier sometimes to get the reference packs, but a lot of these packs use the same model, so you're probably going to be painting the same person from week to week. There's a lot of homework in this class, but as with any critique class, especially when it comes to iteration-based homework like paint 10 heads, you can just do what you have time to do. When I first started taking art classes, I felt like it was a huge deal if I didn't get all of the homework done. But in the end, it's better just to do what you can instead of rushing it. Especially for a lot of us who are super busy, we don't want to get into the mindset of burdening ourselves with excess guilt if we don't finish the homework. I often only did like a third of the homework in the later weeks because I didn't have the time, but I still feel like I got a lot out of the critiques. Thanks so much for watching this review of Kirk Shimoto's head painting. I learned a lot in this class and really developed a newfound appreciation for painting. Painting is fun! If you've taken a painting class in the past that you recommend, or are thinking about taking one in the future, please let me know in the comments because I'd love to hear about your experiences as well. Thanks again for watching, and as promised, here is my homework that I did from the class.